Hello everyone, my name is Tom Hanks and today I'd like to present my top 5 concept cars that could have changed the automotive industry. Now to clarify things right away, these are not necessarily the most capable performance cars that just weren't made. They're not necessarily the coolest looking cars. They are cars that were innovative, cars that could have changed the development of the automotive industry after their presentation, if they had just been made. So with that, let's start at number 5. Number 5, the BMW M8. Now this is only one single prototype, there only is one of these examples, and it was based on the 8 Series E31 and it should have been powered by the S70 engine, which was the engine that was used by BMW in their Le Mans racer. Only for this car obviously it would have been detuned, but it was still a 6-liter V12 with 600 horsepower. Now there's nothing necessarily new about an engine like that, but the fact that this is a big GT car, something like we have today in the Ferrari F12 or something like the Aston Martin Vanquish. With the 600 horsepower engine, this car would have definitely made it so that cars like the Vanquish, cars like the F12 and cars like the Porsche Panamera, that's not necessarily in the same category, but big powerful river drive GT cars would have come much earlier, and we would today be probably at a much higher power and performance level because of this car if they had just made it, but it wasn't meant to be. Number 4, the Audi A1 Clubsport Quattro. Now immediately you notice the red inserts on the headlights, the vents on the bonnet, the fancy rims. This is no ordinary A1. This is the concept car that Audi presented at the 2011 Wörthersee Festival in Austria, and under the bonnet there's the 2.5 liter turbocharged straight 5 engine from the TTRS, but because 340 horsepower like you get in a TT isn't enough for a concept like this, they tuned it to 503 horsepower. The result was a 0 to 100 km an hour acceleration in 3.7 seconds, which, just to give you an idea of how fast it is, that's about the same as a Porsche Carrera GT or a McLaren SLR, or some other supercars that we used to have. And that in a small hatchback like this, paired with the Quattro for optimal traction, this would have made a great performance car, and it would have definitely brought the hot hatchback game to a new level. Who knows, maybe BMW would then have put like their 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 into a 1 Series. Maybe that would have been a thing. We'll never know, because this car wasn't built. Number 3, Jaguar CX75. Powered by a 1.6 liter twin-charged inline-4 engine, making more than 500 horsepower, and in addition to that it also had 2 electric motors, pushing the combined power output to roughly 1000 horsepower. This was not so much completely innovative, in that there were already the 3 hybrid hypercars, the LaFerrari, the P1 and the 918, if not on the market, then at least soon to be released. So it wasn't necessarily the biggest invention, so to say, but with the inline-4 engine, you gotta imagine that the fuel economy of this thing would be way better than all of its competitors, and it also had this inline-4 engine that revved more than 10,000 RPM. It made a noise just like a superbike, and it went like one too. And so it's a shame that Jaguar couldn't make this. It's also a very stunning looking car, and it made its appearance in the newest James Bond film, Spectre. So deservedly so. Not so much an innovation, but definitely one thing we would have loved to have. Number 2, Chrysler Turbine car. Call me crazy, but I think this is one of the greatest, or potentially greatest at least, concept cars ever made, because Chrysler wanted to build a road usable car powered by a turbine. That alone is just kind of crazy to think of, but they kind of made it work in their development stages. Like, the prototypes were running, they were driving, and the good thing about the turbines is they do not produce any CO2. They do also not produce carbohydrates, but they produce a lot of nitrous gases, which, in conjunction with the also very high fuel consumption, was in the end the reason why this wasn't put into production. But the test drivers reckoned that this engine runs much smoother than any traditional engine, especially the big block V8s that they were used to by that time. Remember the late 60s? And I think that today, with our technology, I think we could maybe give it another shot. Maybe try again with the whole turbine thing, because we do have access to better tech, probably reducing the fuel consumption by quite a bit, and maybe also finding a way to make the engine not produce as many nitrous gases, because the engine they used in the first prototype was, well, I don't know what kind of capacity it had, but it made 130 horsepower at 3,600 RPM, and that same engine made 576 newton meters of torque. So these turbine engines seem to produce a lot of torque, so they might have some great uses. We'll never know. Maybe one day another company revives this whole turbine engine thing. Number 1, Mercedes T80. Even for today, this car looks absolutely fabulous. It looks so outlandish, it looks so exotic. It's impossible to think that this car was actually produced in the 1930s, or this prototype at least. Sadly, it wasn't produced. And the story behind it was, in 1936, Hans Stuck went to Mercedes saying he wanted to be the fastest man on Earth. So they had built the fastest car on Earth. They built this car with a shape like this is more aerodynamic than any supercar ever produced. Plus, you can see the wings on the side. They were actually producing downforce in the 1930s. It was powered by a 44.5 liter V12 engine, which is said to have produced 3,500 horsepower. To give you an idea, like, you may have seen the Top Gear episode about the Brutus with the 46 liter BMW V12 engine, right? That engine makes about 1,200 horsepower. Whereas this one makes almost 3 times as much with less capacity. Also, this car was set out to achieve a top speed of over 600 kilometers per hour. They actually set a date for 1940, and they were planning ahead. The road was going to be closed that day, and everything was sorted. But in late 1939, the Second World War broke out, which is a shame, because this car, not only did it make outstanding performance, not only did it look just absolutely amazing, also it had a system that would not allow the rear wheels to spin any faster than the front wheels, which would basically limit wheel spin. So yes, in the late 1930s, this car had traction control. And for that reason, for how innovative it was, for how it would absolutely demolish a Veyron's performance, and given the fact that this is almost 80 years old, given how advanced it was for its time, this is my number 1 concept car that could have changed the automotive industry. Just think of where we could have been if this car was actually produced. So hope you enjoyed this top 5 video. Thank you for watching. Obviously leave some comments in the section below if you agree or disagree, and I will see you next time.